long have you been sober?
25 years, 3 months. My sober birth date is 2 days before Ricky's birthday.
So July 27th.
My birthday, Dad.
What's that?
When's my birthday?
July 27th.
It's the 29th.
Then my sober
Drugs
birthday.
never matter for this guy. All right. So you've been sober for a quarter of a century.
Yep, I'm old.
But what do you think are like the top 3 things that have kept you, that you can chat about that have kept you sober this long?
Well, chat about going from denial to acceptance. I mean, you can say words, but when you take the actions, there's a lot to it.
When you're talking about like moving from denial to acceptance, what do you mean by taking actions when you're working through denial and acceptance?
Well, doing the work in the program instead of just sitting there, understanding what denial is, addiction, but real denial is truly not understanding that a problem even exists.
Yeah.
So you don't know you're like I used to graph with everybody, I'm doing great at work. I'm in the community. I'm doing all these things I'm supposed to do. I'm not an alcoholic.
Right.
Sitting around the meetings, listening to Kenny talk about being in a K car trying to outrun police. And I'm like, I'm not like this asshole,
Right.
So it was a situation where the group I was in, I guess, like I was still from the inside out okay because I wasn't as bad as these guys. So the problem with that is you're in a progression of addiction, whether it's alcohol or whether it's pills. And that progression goes one way, it's like the country song. You start losing this, you start losing that. All these things are happening to you. You get in trouble with the law or whatever, accidents. But it's you're never on a winning streak, right? So it's like, how much in the progression do you do before you hit your particular bottom? Individually, we all have to hit our bottom before we pull up. Are you tired enough? People don't change unless they feel enough pain. 99% of the time. So
well, and that's the thing that I always like talk about, like when you like, it's a really easy conversation because it makes sense in my head when it comes to faith. It's like, I want a real relationship with God, and I think it's okay to question God, and like, is there a higher power, and is this for me, is this not for me, so I to put fear into people to believe in God, I don't think is the right way to do it, because if somebody I'd want somebody to truly believe in God, so like I need to go through all my pain and suffering, before I'm like truly open-minded, to giving God a shot or giving being sober a shot. So I think it's important to do your research or, go out there and hit your bottom to be able to truly believe, okay, like, no, the evidence is there. I do stuff that's not normal. And we need to talk about that acceptance piece. So that was also, part of my story. I bring up God because, I didn't know what I was doing, and I was just practicing prayer and like, I need your help. I know I can't do this alone. And I just came to that point because nothing else worked. And I kept trying that, and something clicked and continued to work. And to this day, I call that, God working with me and my higher power. But I think for that acceptance piece, I think that people have to go through what they're going to go through so that they can really be open-minded, because nothing else has worked at that point, to be like, maybe I should accept. Now, how do we process this? So, yeah. And it sounds like, do you battle with accepting it? After 25 years in 3 months, do you battle at all throughout your, sobriety with continuing to accept?
No problem with acceptance of where I am, and no problem being clean and sober today.
So what do you say to, I wanted to ask a question. So what do you say to people that do struggle with that? How How would you support somebody that's struggling with that?
Yeah. After 25 years, I still tell the story, and it happens. It can be 80, 90 degrees, and I'll see a Bud Light on a billboard sweating. And inside myself, in my head, I can taste that beer. And I say to myself, yeah, I could probably do one. And then I got a mental cue and I say, give your head a shot.
So like you would say a coping mechanism, don't mean to interrupt, but I think it's important to understand that a coping mechanism, when you do get something that pops up like that, or a craving, or like a thought, it's a slippery slope. So what you do is you play out the tape, and by playing out the tape that it's not going to end well, and you're just chasing the first high, the first like really good feeling that you had. So I think what you're saying, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like for somebody that struggles with continued acceptance, which is a daily reprieve, because you got to wake up every day and be smart about it. Otherwise you go back to your old ways. It's pretty easy to fall back into that default mode. So it is a daily reprieve, and part of that in what you practice is playing out the tape. And maybe what are some other things, like say the thoughts marinating in your head, what are some other things that you would do to be able to get as healthy about it as possible and continue on with your sobriety without having to suffer mentally, and constantly obsessing about it? What happens then? Like, what do you do?
That's another thing. Like, it's practice, drill, rehearse, right? With anything you do to get better. So if I don't pick up that phone and just talk to people on a regular basis, when a crisis hits, or I really feel like I'm on a drink, I'm not going to pick up that 500-pound
You're already
phone.
Isolated. Yeah. It's easy to stay there. Yeah.
So if I practiced it, I can pick up the phone. Like I can call Bob and I can just hear his voice, and it's just calming. I don't have to say, hey, the world's taking nicks out of me like crazy today. And it's just, you hear that voice, that voice is clean and sober, and it just starts filling your bucket up again. So it's staying in touch, and I'm pretty hard-headed. So it's, I immersed myself in becoming a counselor and becoming a therapist for addiction. So,
sure. How about spiritually? What do you do spiritually when you go through that stuff? So I know for me, sometimes I still do this so natural to this day, because like, obviously like you and Rick drank. So I knew I could not come home drunk to be able to get away with continuing to get messed up. So what I tried to do, which didn't work out too well, was get high. So smoking weed became my go-to, because I wanted to feel that. And
that was
now, what's that?
That was real tough to tell.
Yeah, Rick, can you order some wings? So what I do now, it literally happened the other day. I'm on the golf course and I can smell weed. Naturally, I'm like, damn it, like, can people just not, have to drink or have to, get high when you're playing golf? Something like out here just trying to have fun, whatever. But, it's not about us. It's about how we can be the best versions of ourselves in society. So what I do naturally when I smell weed is I program myself, because I've just went to this every single time, where it's like, it might not even be the like most appropriate prayer for what's happening, but I do a God grant me the serenity to accept things I can't change, the wisdom to know the difference, all the above. And I do that real quick, because it allows me, like, I feel like that's a protective shield, and like, trusting the higher power that he's going to take care of me, or whatever your higher power is. I also do that to give myself a moment to play out the tape, like if I continue to say it when I'm really struggling, it allows me to be like, okay, like chasing that one giggle time, and after that, it just was a shit show. You already know that it's not going to play out very well. So now in my 10 plus years of sobriety, I just go to, I say the prayer, and I give myself a little pat on the back for practicing something positive towards my recovery. Say, good job. and I continue to move forward, and it's not that big of a deal anymore. And the obsession has left me. Like, I'm not romanticizing it after. I'm more concentrated on shooting a 75. So, but I just like, let's wrap up with the acceptance thing. But is there like any other things that you would suggest that somebody can try, you know, for the acceptance piece?
Well, the higher power thing is really important. So, and again, your higher power can be your higher power, right? I really think, you know, I had a head start because I believed in God, you know. So some kind of higher power is really important, whether that's just all the heads at the table, you know, is your higher power, but it's just a power greater than yourself. So that's important because we spend all our lives in addiction by really isolating and by saying, I'll do life all by myself. I don't need you, you know? And so there's a transition to, okay, I'm going to accept this. I'm going to find a higher power. You know, for some people that's tough. Some people that's real easy. You know, I used to say, okay, I know you're up there, but just don't work against me. You know, my prayers are a lot different today.
Sure.
You know, so it's I start my days by saying a prayer. When I pull out of the driveway, first thing I do is thank God for letting me be vertical and for letting me see another day. And, you know, truly mean it, because you guys know my history. You know, I shouldn't be here. Maybe I should be here, but I almost wasn't. So, you know, I'd rather fill my bucket up in the morning and kind of use it like armor for the day than to let the day go through and, you know, do all the battles and then fill up at night. So I like the morning meetings for that reason, and I'll say my prayers. I say my prayers, you know, first thing in the morning and the last thing at night, both. But
I think it's a really good point to express that it doesn't matter what your prayer is. What matters is the action of trying and like going to that, you know, where it's like, I'm going to dip my toe into the spiritual pool or higher power pool and just try that piece of the program, whether you believe or not. I think it doesn't matter for me personally. I think that it doesn't matter the prayer, how perfect the prayer is, or like, who am I praying to? Or it's like the practice of, you know, doing something a little different and practicing prayer, being in whatever you want to call it. I think it's just important to do the action. And I think that what I've noticed by doing the action, because I never, like, when I prayed, I'm like, I don't know who you, I've literally said, I don't know who you are. I need your help though. I can't do this alone because I don't know how to do it, you know? And I think just practicing that, something so simple, you can pray to a tree, you can pray to whatever you want to, but I think practicing something like that, it will continue to evolve, and you will notice something that happens where your obsession gets relieved and your romanticizing gets relieved, and you'll find that you're sober another day. And that's all that matters, is being sober another day. Nothing else matters. It doesn't matter to be right.
Yeah. And I you know, with what I do for a living right now, I've heard so many different higher powers. As long as you believe that that's your higher power and you're not like just picking something, then it works.
Yeah. Well, when you're just picking something, you're really not trying or putting forth your, you know, all your effort.
Right.
Well, first off, how long have you been sober?
I got the app, so it's 17.68 years.
I don't think anybody would have thought that. Now you and Dad combined have about 42 years together. Just you two. 42 years between the two of you nut shows. You guys aren't supposed to be here or be sober. And yeah, Rick, honestly, like I remember being little and going up to Mom and Dad, and because you hadn't been home near the end of your stint, and I remember going up to Mom and Dad being like, what if she's in a ditch and nobody knows, you know, when we were wondering where you were. And anyway, so yeah, you two are definitely not supposed to be here and have long-term sobriety. So what do you think What is one thing you can suggest that's helped you into staying sober for 17 plus years now?
I think, I mean, I wrote it down and underlined it. It was one of the biggest ones for me. It was just surrendering more to the fact that I wasn't like a normal person that could just have a glass of wine or 2 glasses of wine. And then I couldn't do that because, like what Dad said, you know, it's not just the 1 or the 2. Like I was like, where's the 1 plus the 24? You know, and really that day I was in a robe. You know, the night before was annihilated. Got into drugs the night before that, and I just remember standing in that kitchen, and it was that God moment. It was, I dropped to my knees and said, I need help. I surrender. Like I need help, and asked for help from God. You know, and that was my moment. And I mean, I knew what I needed to do because I'd already been through rehab. I'd already gotten sober before, but it was at that point where I was finally, I truly had surrendered. I don't know that I truly surrendered the first time. It was like the first time, you know, it was after my 21st birthday, and then it was, you know, all right, I should probably head into rehab. This isn't normal. What's going on with me and these blackouts and all the other war stories that go along with that. And so I wasn't like truly surrendered at that point. So like when, you know, earlier in the conversation, you're talking about different bottoms, like this was a lower bottom for me. And this was fortunately my bottom, to be able to say, okay, I need to make that phone call. And so that's when Mom had come over to the house, and, you know, I actually talked about this, I think it was at a meeting yesterday. But, you know, she didn't coddle me. She didn't take me out, you know, to go eat or to buy clothes or anything like that, you know, for trying to fix the problem with materialistic stuff or, you know, not doing what I needed to do. And she pretty much just said, look, you know what you need to do. And obviously there was more conversation that had happened, but then for a mother to walk out the door not knowing if your son is going to choose, you know, one way or the other on that good path or keep going down the path which could ultimately kill that person. She walked out. Thankfully, probably for me, it was more of a God moment. I remember having my 24-hour book, and actually the first person in that book on there on the number was Bart and then Bob. And then I reached out to Bob because Bart didn't pick up the phone. And Bob took me back to my first meeting. We went to dinner together, all places being Lou and Carl's. That used to be my old stomping grounds. But he showed me what I could do, you know, being sober with having a meal and being in that type of environment, which didn't feel good at the time. I felt like, oh, I shouldn't be here. But then I remember getting to that meeting that night, and this was kind of like, to bring this back full circle, like the surrendering moment for me was, I remember I got to that table, and actually the guy that Dad was talking about, Kenny with the K car, he was sitting at that table that night. And when it came to me, I literally just said, I've surrendered. I want the serenity that you guys have, because I don't have that. And that was kind of the kickstart back for me. But ultimately it was surrendering this last time.
So a couple of things. I think you definitely had to go through your journey to get to that point, to truly surrender, because we fight with everything that we have. What do you say to an alcoholic, a struggling alcoholic, or family members that see that there's still an issue, somebody hasn't completely surrendered?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I'm pretty open about, you know, my recovery and stuff. And so I have quite a few people that reach out to me. And it's like this last person too, she was a mom, and it's not even her child, but, you know, the mom she is just not there. She's not at her bottom. She hasn't surrendered, and she didn't know what to do. And I said, unfortunately, there's nothing that you can do. You know, it's just when someone decides that they've had enough to where they turn to someone, you know, that they can get help from. And so I just think it's tough being on the other side of it, which I was before I became that person, just with Dad and growing up. And because I was going to Alateen at the time at Brighton Hospital. So, you know, here I am as a kid, and like, why am I here? Why do I have to go through these steps as an Alateen instead of Al-Anon? And to learn that whole side of the program of how you are dealing with, and the difference of, you know, the addicted person. We don't like the addiction. We don't like that person, but we love the person without addiction. And so I think it's tough to kind of differentiate between the two.
Yeah.
Because it's not that we hate the person, we hate the addiction.
Yeah. So I think, thinking back, so for what family members can do is the toughest thing to do, which is called detaching with love. And I think Mom expressed that when she said, you called the wrong person today. And that created an opportunity for you to choose, truly choose in your life, surrendering and being sober. And that is probably the scariest thing a family member has to go through. I actually think it's tougher for family members to be family members of alcoholics and addicts, because you can't control the addict or alcoholic, and you have to just watch.
Absolutely.
And not know what's going to happen. So I think
the night Mom left Ricky's house, all she could cry and you know, I don't know if he's going to kill himself. I don't know if he's going to be all right. And she said, I got to go back and stuff, and, you know, talked about it. And it's the toughest thing to do is, you're right. I mean, it's harder to be the family member than it is to be the alcoholic or addict.
You can speak a lot towards that too, from obviously Rick and myself and our use. But I was going to say, for family members, like you're validating, I think it's tougher because, you know, they have to watch the destruction. They're a part of it, and they have to learn a new way of living, which is actually a blessing in disguise, but it doesn't feel like that when you have that pain at that point in time. And the new point of living is called learning to establish boundaries, because if you don't and you enable, addicts going to use whether they're enabled or not. But if you enable, it just kind of opens up the door for the addict to continue to use and makes it easier for them. But when you detach with love, it makes it more difficult because they love you. Their addiction is just driving their bus, and they want to get sober, but they're not understanding why, or they can't figure out why they can't get sober, whatever, yada, yada. There's plenty of reasons. But I think for the family member, it's important to identify that you have to get educated, and you have to really dive deep, and you have to, you know, because it's like what Mom always says, you know, if somebody has diabetes in the house, you don't put a thing of like the best donuts ever on the kitchen table. You know, if somebody's truly struggling with that, you know, you're a team, you're a tribe, and you don't do that. So it's a massive blessing in disguise, which I think what most families are, some people are pissed. They don't want to do, they're like, you know, my kid's the addict, or, you know, my wife's the addict, and they're causing the destruction. Why do I have to do anything? And really, if, you know, you want them to be sober, which you do, you know, you stick together and you be a tribe, and you get educated and you start practicing some of these things, because there's so much more to talk about within that too. And I'm happy to talk with anybody about that at any time. But so for the sake of what a family member can say for somebody that is struggling to find serenity or to surrender to the addiction is, you know, establish boundaries, you know, detach with love, provide the opportunity for, like Rick, what you had said is choosing. Do I want to be sober or not? You know, and you chose. You're like, I'm sick of the pain, because you had so much pain.
It was more along, like I was thinking about it when you were talking, like for me, I wanted to live. I didn't want to die, because I did have the visuals. I did contemplate suicide legitimately. I had picked out the biggest tree that's on Byron Road. I know what tree it is. And I was going to throttle the car down and drive into that thing, and I was just going to end my life. I was done, because I couldn't take it anymore. And so, but that's what it came down to. I wanted to live.
Which might have not have, you know, presented an opportunity if Mom didn't leave, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So
I would say, to go back to the family deal, like, you know, mom got educated. I mean, when dad was going through treatment. I think that's the other side of it too, that if you're speaking to the family side, like it's not just the alcoholic that's creating the destruction within the house, but there's also things that happen, whether it be enabling or, other things that go sideways within a relationship. And then that trickles down, and then you got kids into the equation, they're hiding things like you guys used to do with dad. And, when you tell mom, no, he's not doing that. And so, you make the whole situation worse. And so at the end of the day, like, the people who aren't in the addiction are still just as messed up as the people that are in the addiction. And I think that's tough for family members to grasp that, because they've just been in it and that's all they've known at that point.
And I think, to add to that, I think what most families don't know, but if they go through it, they'll be very grateful, is that their life will be much cleaner after being educated and given the blueprints to being successful. Where I've met so many people that are like, man, like AA shouldn't just be for addicts. Like AA should be for people trying to learn how to live their best life and learn what spirituality is, or learn how to accept things and just be much more peaceful, and talk about their character defects, and how to establish cues in your head that make you not act out, or like support you in not acting out. Like there's just so much stuff that most families don't realize when they're fighting it too, just like an addict fights getting sober. So anyway, I think the surrendering piece is a really good one. I think it's funny that you and dad both, the first one is like acceptance and surrendering, which are pretty close, obviously a little bit different, but yeah, I think that is a tough one, because you have to the addict has to come to that place. And like that, what do you think is like the second thing for you that's kept you sober for 25 years?
Just having the little victories along the way and rewarding yourself helps to keep you going, helps to keep you sober. It's probably another talk, but we talk a little bit about pause, and it's post-acute withdrawal syndrome. But I always called it the black hole. I didn't know any of that. I called it the black hole. So you stop synthetically producing dopamine into your brain, and there's no fun drug. Your body actually shuts off the fun drugs, serotonin and dopamine, when you're exploding dopamine into your body with alcohol and drugs.
Yeah.
So you stop using, your body stopped producing the fun drugs. So what's left? This is sobriety, and this is pretty miserable to me. If this is sobriety, I don't want it, So to have the little victories, okay, you stayed sober. Instead of buying yourself a 12-pack, go get a hot fudge sundae. Little rewards. Okay, that did taste pretty good. You start, what'd you like as a kid? The little rewards are important to keep you sober. And as things get better, the promises, as things get better, they keep snowballing and they're permanent. So it just continues to get better and better and better. If you're in your right mind, why would you jeopardize that? Right? But there was always, we talked about stages. There's always, all right, so I've been sober a year. Right before I die, I'm going to blow this out, man. I'm just going to get trashed. And as you continue to go, it's like all those mindsets change. It's like, I had the thought, like I used to say to you guys, I used to say to kids, how you act in town, you got your jersey, you got your name on your back. We want to be proud of this team. We want to be proud of you guys. So I don't want people to know me and know that I'm out using. I just don't want that. I don't want that to be me. I don't want it on my headstone. Here lies the drunk. Right? So as you move through the stages of sobriety, the progression of things getting better and better and better, those thoughts kind of go away, and it's just positive thoughts. I don't want to blow it out at the end of the race. It's just why, at this point.
It's funny that you say that, because it brought me back, and I used to think that too. Like, I used to say when I was first getting sober, I'm gonna be an old man with a cane, and inside my cane I'm gonna have just a ton of weed, and I'm just gonna roll my little joints and smoke. And I think it's funny that you say that, because as you get sober, like, that stuff just goes away. And I think that's also another, point where you need to practice self-love. And it's like those victories that you're talking about, which is really cool, because you've reached a point in sobriety where you're changing how your mind works. And I think that itself is a spiritual awakening. When you're a spiritual awakening can be something just as small as that. It doesn't have to be when lightning comes down and you're a new man. When your thinking changes. And I think it talks about that somewhere in the big book. I can't remember which page it is, but so you have like a spiritual awakening, or like you're at that, you crossed a pretty cool milestone in your sobriety when you don't think like that anymore. And that does happen. That does go away, which is pretty cool. I guess I can attest to that, because that's part of my story too. But I like that a lot, having little victories. I think it's important to identify and celebrate those things. And what you used to tell me is, sometimes when I was on a Friday or Saturday night, when you're new in sobriety, you're like, great, is this what I'm going to call being sober? Go to 6 meetings a day and drink some coffee with some people that kind of are like, okay, and like, I don't want to call this life. I didn't get sober to like not have fun. And I think it's sometimes you just need on a Friday, Saturday night, I love Ben and Jerry's. I would treat myself, even though you're trying to get everything healthy in your life. And I think it's important to reward yourself too. Like, you used to get a 6-pack or a 12-pack or a 1,000,000-pack, and on a Friday night it's okay to have some Ben and Jerry's.
That's another great point in sobriety is we all have to forgive ourselves as much as we can before we can go forward a lot of times. And that includes the family forgiving us too. But forgiving yourself, like I always talk about, I've done that probably 85%. I'm 25 years into it. I don't know if I can ever forgive myself 100%, for things I've done in the past, and, just kick, scratch, gouge to get to the top, all that stuff. But that 85% is a lot farther than I've ever had before. And families get sick along with everybody else. When the addiction comes in the house, it comes in the house and affects everybody. So, I talk about how when you're little or your family's young, everybody's playing board games and eating around the table and having fun. And as addiction comes into the house, everybody starts moving right into their own bedrooms and eating in their own bedrooms, and everybody's in the house, but the family unit's gone. So that addiction's really affected everybody. So, the day Mom sat with me in front of the counselor and said, "I forgive you," that was a huge moment as far as being able to stay clean and sober, because I didn't have to numb that out anymore, if that makes sense.